Hello, and welcome to episode 122 of the Elevate Your Running podcast. Today's episode is all about how to think about your base phase of training. And I think this is super timely. Hopefully, you're finding this timely because you may have just come off racing a spring race. You may be coming off of a season of more inconsistency because of the shorter days and the colder days. Maybe you're gearing up for like a bigger fall race and it's not quite time to start training yet. Today, I'm going to share about how to think about your base phase of training. This is the bread and butter of your aerobic development. It is such a huge piece to racing well and staying healthy and not getting injured that I think a lot of times runners we're like eager to get to the final destination. We're eager to race, we're eager to hit our PRs, we're eager to hit our process goals, and we're not taking the time to like really slow down, literally and figuratively. Well, I think today's episode is going to be really, really great. Before we begin, I want to share an elevated moment from Nathan. He is coming off of running the Boston Marathon and he went into running a 5K. Now, this was a few weeks after the race, and the race wasn't nearly what Nathan was in shape for or his fitness. So it was an easy decision to kind of just jump into the 5K and see how it goes. And he said at the end, he was racing down the straightaway with this kid, like a child. And he said he eventually got outkicked by this kid. And he said that just created so much joy. And he really loved it. And that's what it's all about for him. And I think that's so great. I think oftentimes we can get maybe caught up in all the things that come with running, whether it's good or maybe not so healthy parts to it. And to kind of get back to really that what it's all about. It's all about having that joy, having that fun, going and jumping into races. And, maybe you're racing in a very friendly, competitive way at the end down the straightaway. Oftentimes, if I find myself in that situation, it's like you're kind of like, I'm feeling the vibe, right? Or if I can talk or the other person can talk, it's like a quick, like, you got this, come on. And you kind of work together to run strong through the end, which is a lot of fun. So I'm really, really glad that brought Nathan so much joy. I'd love to hear from you and your elevated moment of the day or the week. You can send those in through the Elevate Instagram or through the Elevate website at elevateyourrunning.com. All right, I want to jump into this week's episode on how to think about your base phase of training. So, yeah, we might be coming off of a spring race. We might be coming off of a training cycle. We might be coming off of inconsistency, but now is the time to start building that base phase of training. No matter where you really are in your running journey, because it's so critical to having a strong fall or setting yourself up for success later on in the year. So, what is the base phase of training? Well, the base phase of training is running that improves your aerobic fitness before we move on to race specific training. So, this is traditionally done maybe in the winter. I know a lot of people stay in base phase over the winter, but this could be in between the mesocycle training cycles, which are basically the 12 to 16 week training blocks that we use for your racing, right? So this could be your fall half or your fall marathon. You're going to have a 12 to 16 week mesocycle that is designed specifically for your fall race. And the base phase can often land before this phase. And it can be anywhere from 6 weeks to 8 weeks to 3 months, 4 months. It can be as long as you really want it for. And it's a really great way to kind of build that foundation. I call it the engine in the body. You want to have maybe that Ferrari engine or that Tesla battery or however you want to look at it. And in order to do that, this base phase and some really strong aerobic running is going to get you there. So the base phase consists of your endurance training, so your aerobic running. It also includes added strength training and explosive strength training moves, also called plyos. So this could be a little bit different depending on where you are in your running journey. If you're just starting out, strength training and your explosive strength training moves are going to be a little bit different than someone who has been maybe running for years and years and years, has the time and dedication and the desire to put in a lot of effort on that strength training side. So give yourself grace around this, acknowledge where you are, and know that you can always maybe do just 1% better, right? It's that 1% rule of what can you do today to show up just a little bit stronger in any way in this base training phase. So it's a heavier focus of strength during this time, which I absolutely love. If you are someone that is getting into more and more strength training when you're not training, let's say you're not in a marathon training cycle yet, like I'm not in a marathon training cycle right now. My mileage is a little bit lower than what that cycle looks like. I have a bit more energy throughout the week. I'm able to add in more strength training to really build my muscles as strong as we can get them before we taper back a little bit on the strength training or kind of reduce some of the exercises a bit before we go into that marathon training cycle. And then as we get closer to race day, we taper down the strength more and more. What that does is basically you're looking for that strength training to really kick in during the race, being able to recruit those muscles to be able to run stronger, faster for longer. So for the marathon, half marathon distance, it's a great place to be. So that strength training could be a piece of your base phase. Now, Jason Fitzgerald has been on the podcast before, and he's talked about how strength training doesn't necessarily have to be that heavy lifting like I was just talking about. It can be those body movements. Today I had 10 minutes to do mobility work, and I literally just did this four exercise move cycle or circuit for 10 minutes straight. And it was using a lot of my body strength. It was using a resistance band. And that's all I had for today. And that's what I did. And I got it done. And it can look like planks. It can look like glute bridges. It can look like tricep dips or push-ups. It can look very like basic on the surface, right? But really it's ultimately creating a very strong runner. So sometimes those basic, quote unquote, basic moves are the moves and the exercises that are going to up level you as a runner. Now, you can also have strides in your base phase. Strides are acceleration to deceleration in pace. So oftentimes you can see these 1 to 2 days a week. They could be 4 or 5 by 20-second strides in the middle of a few 1 or 2 easy runs. They could be at the end of a run where you have standing rest in between. You also probably see strides before your workout. Strides are really important to kind of warm up the legs, warm up the body, definitely warm up the lungs as you go into either a workout. But what I love about strides when you add them in to those running weeks where they're either at the end or they're in the middle of your run is that if you were to take all the strides that you ran over the course of a year and added up that distance, right? Like in about 20 seconds, I can get anywhere from 0.05 to 0.07, maybe 0.08 in 20 seconds. So if you can add up all of those distances over the year, think about how fast you're running at that high level. It also helps with your running form, which is also a great way to run easier in your race, because when you have good running form, or you have a more dialed in running form. Now, everyone's running form looks different, and everyone has a running form that works for them. The more efficient you can get with your running form, the easier it is to run, which means your running economy is easier, which means, or it's better, which means that you're able to produce what you want to produce, maybe a little bit easier or with less energy on race day. And that's always a good feeling. Think about how you feel at the end of a race. We're all usually pretty tired if you're going after it. And if you can have a little bit more energy around that, that's a great place to be. Now, the long run is also a distance that is maintained throughout each week. So it could be something like 8 to 10 miles, especially if you are a marathoner. It's not going to be a long run that goes too long, maybe depending on what's coming up next for you, because you want to give your body a break from those long runs, right? You don't need to be running 16, 18, 20, 22 miles every single week throughout the entire year. That's a really good way to get hurt, to get injured, and to burn out. Definitely with the mindset. I know after I raced CIM and I went into that training cycle feeling pretty fatigued from long runs because I was doing a lot of um, long run organizations in Denver. So the Elevate team has long runs on Saturday, and I think, a part of those maybe every other weekend. And when they're in Denver, it can turn into a 4 or 5 hour run for me with the commute and coffee, and like maybe I'm running 10 miles, maybe 12. I think 12 was the highest I got last summer. And when you go into a marathon training cycle already tired from how long your long runs have been taking, out of your weekend or out of a day, that can be a really scary place to be because there isn't a whole lot of wiggle room. You just kind of have to like power through it, right? Or don't. So you want to make sure that that long run distance is maintained, but it's not too much stress or too many miles, too much time on feet, because you want to be able to go into your, maybe it's a half, maybe it's a full training cycle, feeling ready to go, which is a great place to be. You don't necessarily need to have a cutback or a recovery week. I still like to give this. I think it's still a nice mental break to kind of have a week where it's like, oh, I'm running even fewer miles. And now my long run is definitely 2 or 3 miles shorter. I think that's a great place to be. Always having that body and mind sharp, ready to go for your training cycle is where you want to be. And the base phase can give this to you. It was Jonathan Levitt that brought it up, and it's not being greedy in training. Like, don't be greedy in training. And I think that it can apply to the space phase of training. Don't try not to do too much, right? It's a balancing act, making sure that you're still keeping and holding your fitness, that you're still maintaining some sort of speed. The strides are going to contribute to that. The long run is going to help you with that time on feet. So it's not such a shock to the system when you get into your long runs for your training cycle. But you also want to make sure that you're not doing too much, because if you're greedy in the training cycle and it's the base phase, it could haunt you in the next phase that's coming up in your next mesocycle. So really being present with what's happening and what's going on and how you're showing up. And hey, the base phase is also a great time to focus in on maybe some extra cross training, maybe spending time with friends or leaning into hobbies that maybe you've kind of put off to the side a little bit when race training begins, because we all know that sometimes when training begins and we're in the thick of training, that all those other things that are still very important to us kind of fall by the wayside, because training and showing up and getting our workouts in and feeling good on our long runs kind of takes the priority for that 12 or 16-week cycle. The base mileage is going to be a portion of your max mileage week. So that's also really important to remember, that base mileage is going to be a portion of your max mileage for the week. So what does that mean? That means that if you were to look back on your last training cycle, take a look at that max mileage week that you ran, or weeks, right? Some people, it's like they get so hyper focused on peak week for training. And peak week isn't necessarily just 1 week. It could be 2 weeks. It could be 3 weeks in a block, in a training block. So take a look back to see what was your max mileage week. And then you want to take a portion or a percentage of that to be your base mileage for this next, for this base training block or cycle. Oftentimes, I'll also look at what the athlete had been doing in their base training before, kind of where was that sweet spot in base, or that sweet spot in the training cycle before we got to peak, and then kind of build base mileage based off of that number. So like the number kind of in that sweet spot of the training cycle, maybe a few miles under that. And then also taking into account of the goals that they have going into this next cycle. What do they want to do? What are their outcome goals? What are their process goals? Do they have more time to run? Do they want to run more? All of those things, because with every training cycle, there gets to be a new stressor applied. And that's something that I don't think we talk about enough as coaches. If we go through the exact same training cycle, so maybe you bought a plan and you're following that plan and you're just using it over and over and over again, chances are you're not getting faster. You may get faster in one training cycle and then it's going to plateau. And that's something that I really strive for when I coach, is creating this structured chaos within the body to really break things up and to give more stress in different ways to the body, so it's constantly guessing and it's not plateauing. And that's where PRs can happen, outcome goals. Okay, so why is easy running or base building tough to master? I want to talk about this because I have a lot of athletes right now kind of flowing from spring racing into easy running or base building. I created a reel on this a few weeks ago. I think it's incredibly hard to master that easy pace until you master it. And then when you master it, it's like this light goes off. It's like an aha moment. And it's something that you can't really forget. It's like your eyes are open to the possibility of what easy running can do for you, or true easy and recovery running. So it's funny because I do have some athletes who are having, just talking about how difficult it is, right? And I get it. I was there and I didn't understand it and I didn't want to embrace it. And I thought every single run had to feel like a workout, that it had to feel like I was breathing hard. But I was also constantly injured and I was having treatment done all the time. And when I say all the time, like I was in my PT's office at least twice a month getting dry needled, definitely. And, or something was going on. And I think that's a really difficult way to train. And it also creates a greater impact for burnout, mental burnout, physical burnout, injury. I was lucky enough to only sustain 2 major injuries in my life. Hopefully it stays that way. And the rest have been like niggles that I've had to just work through. But that's also not great because it takes time, it takes financial resources. It does kind of, I think, take some mental load too to kind of get through all of that. So if the easy running is truly there in most of your runs, or in the base building phase, it's going to be for all of your runs, right? That it's going to provide a lot of value. So most of us need work in this area until you see the light. And then I think when you cross over to the other side, it's really difficult to go back to that side, at least in my opinion. I look forward to my easy and recovery days because there are no expectations. The only expectation I have for myself going out there is like, ooh, let's play a game and just see how low I can keep my heart rate today. Like that sort of thing. I really like to keep it joggy. I really like to keep it conversational. I like to, and I have in the past taken phone calls during runs if I have my phone with me and the other person on the other side doesn't even know I'm running. I think that's a true test to keeping things easy, right? So if we keep our easy runs easy, we have the ability to really be able to execute our workouts beautifully. We're going to have stronger workouts. We are not going to fall into that overuse injury or that overtraining kind of sector of training. So this will be kind of in that next phase too. But that easy running is a pace, like I said, that's like conversational. You're able to sing your favorite song and not gasping for air. And I know it's tough. The cool part about the base building phase is that if you can lock in this easy running, it's going to be so much easier to do this in the mesocycle phase of your next training. So like your fall half or your fall full, right? So you are going to be able to hit those key workouts stronger, faster, better, right? And sometimes I don't like using the word better or faster, but like that's reality. If we can have more of that polarized training where everything outside of workouts and long runs are really slow and joggy, and then we can really execute some strong days on workout Wednesday, long run Saturday, Sunday, you're going to be in great shape for your race. It's also going to help prevent the overuse injuries. So those could be injuries that pop up just from overuse, which is usually attributed to higher intensity running. So if you're running everything hard, that's a higher intensity running, or the overtraining where you're not recovering enough in between runs and you just dig yourself into a hole. I think it's also really important to know that overtraining can be something that happens when there's too much stress going on in your life outside of like if you're in a new training cycle and the training cycle is really stressful because maybe it's you're up leveling and you have harder workouts or you're working with a new coach or you have a bigger goal or you're having I don't know, like the course is different. So you're running a ton of hills, like all of that can be stress. So making sure that you're recovering enough. And in my experience, it doesn't mean just hanging out at home and saying, I'm recovering because I'm not doing anything. If your brain is still working on overtime and you can't turn your brain off, you're not recovering from running. So that's an interesting place to be. It's not a fun place to be, but if you can recognize it, name it to tame it, and then shut it down and do what you can, you'll be in a great spot. So we may feel like we haven't been jogging in our training. We may be going after each run faster and faster and faster. We may be going after that, like, I want to have that great workout. I want to feel tired at the end of every single run. We may feel like we need to show up a certain way on social media or Strava. Like, I get it. I absolutely get it. When you can take out that ego, it's going to be so cool to see it on the other side. It's going to be so cool because you're going to enjoy your running more. There's zero expectations on the majority of your running. You're going to have more energy. You're going to feel good at the end of your runs, right? And who cares how you show up on social media? Like, I think it's really, I live in a town where everyone runs everything so fast, and I am the minority when it comes to actually like jogging my recovery stuff, my recovery runs, my easy runs. And it's difficult, right? Being surrounded by people who don't necessarily embrace it as much. I shouldn't say not at all, but maybe not as much as I do. But also, if you can be convicted in what you need and what you want, it's going to ultimately make you happier at the end because you're going to stay injury free, you're going to stay happy. And I think if you're looking to run with people who might be wanting to push the pace a little bit, being comfortable enough to say like, oh, this is too fast for me today, or establishing some sort of pacing guideline before starting the run. And I know it's really easy to say like, oh, but we were talking and we got caught up and we didn't notice it. And that's fine. And just being aware of it and knowing that, you know, if it starts to become a habit, then it could be something that could show up in some of these like key workouts, overuse injury, overtraining, are already training your mind that when you run with friends, you're running faster. And then how does that play into not just your base phase, but when you really get into that hardy training cycle where all the miles and time on feet count, they just count in a different way. So you want to focus on those easy and recovery runs. They can be about actually, the recovery runs can be about 2 minutes slower than your marathon pace. Easy runs can be like 60 to 90 seconds slower than your marathon pace. Sometimes my easy runs fall into recovery runs, right? Recovery runs typically are going to be the runs that fall after your workout, after your long run, and then the easy runs are sprinkled in between that. But just last week, I had a hard workout on Wednesday. I took recovery miles on Thursday. I took recovery miles on Friday. My legs were still tired, and that's okay. It's so much better to honor your body, honor yourself, than to go in and try and push that pace, because ultimately it's going to take you longer to recover. And then you're not going to be quite as ready to go for your next workout. So my recovery runs last week ended up being 2 minutes and 10, 2 minutes and 20 seconds slower than my marathon pace. And that's typically where my runs fall. And I couldn't imagine running 60 seconds slower for all of my runs than marathon pace. I can't imagine it, but I know some people do it. And I know that that's like something that's just what you know, right? And I think it's really cool when athletes and runners can be curious enough to say, I want to try this and see if it works, and giving it enough time to work. I think if you're struggling with the easy days, setting out each run with like setting an intention for each run, I think is going to be huge. So it may not be perfect. And I think especially if it's something that you're really trying to dial in, it's not going to be perfect. You're going to have days where you're like, I nailed it. And then there's going to be days where you don't nail it. Like maybe it's running with a friend and progressing a little bit too fast or whatever. And that's okay. I think as long as the intentionality is there, you know, oh, I ran a little bit fast today. I need to recover a little bit harder. Or you understand kind of the nature of why you need to be running slower. And going into with that intention for the next run, you're going to be great. It's going to be absolutely great. You will make progress at some point, and then it's just going to be more of that natural, like easy to start this run as a jog, as a warm up, and then you're kind of shuffling or jogging into zone 2 for the rest of your run. If you're looking for more data or more information on heart rate training with easy runs, you can find that in episode 57 with Running Explained herself, Elizabeth Scott, where Austin and I talk all about heart rate training and the benefits, the different types of heart rate training, and all the good stuff there. So that's back in the archives, episode 57. So now I want to transition to how to enjoy your base phase of training, right? How to really enjoy it and make the most out of it. So you can take the first mile or two easy. I kind of hinted at that just a minute ago, like a jog, no expectations. It's actually the way that I warm up for my easy and recovery runs. I just start to shuffle, and my teammates call it the Sarah shuffle. And I'm just warming up. Usually the first mile or two are going to be quite a bit slower. I'm saying like 2.5 to 2 minutes and 45 seconds slower than my marathon pace. Very, very easy. Depends if I'm starting on an uphill or a downhill. everything's either up or down in Boulder. There's no flat, it feels like, or I guess there's a false flat, but sometimes it takes the entire run, and it might not be until like right at the end of the run where I start to feel good. And I know some of you can relate to that. But take that first mile or two very, very easy. Take it as a way to just enjoy, look around, notice what's happening around you, focus on your breath, focus on maybe your intention for the day, focus on maybe like what you want to accomplish this year in running or in life. Or I love to think about like creative things. So it could be projects with Elevate, it could be social media topics to post on Elevate. It could be visualizing my next race and what I want to create. It can be so many different things. Sometimes I focus in on athletes and things that they're going through. That doesn't always necessarily feel like, a very like comfortable feeling, right? If you're thinking about something that isn't quite as joyful, right? As maybe thinking about like your next race or how you're spending your time at night. Maybe you're meeting up with a friend. But it is a way to kind of keep that first few miles easy. I also suggest don't look at the pace on your watch. Just jog, right? One of my teammates actually turns off her auto lap for easy days, and so she never gets a ding on her, like the buzz on her watch. It doesn't happen. She runs based on time, or like she'll look down and be like, oh yeah, I'm at 4 miles, I should turn around. So she might do an out and back. But I think that's awesome because it really gives us the opportunity to just jog rather than the intention of, every time we look at our watch to see that split, what are we thinking? What comes through our mind? Are we judging it? I think we probably are, whether it's positive or negative. So if you can let go of that, or maybe you cover it up with your long sleeve, or it's something that you just get used to not looking at. Again, it's something where if I'm not looking at my watch, it's kind of like this game of like, oh, I can't wait to see what this data looks like after my run. Because I will look at it after my run, just like my heart rate, but it's not something that I necessarily look at when I'm running. I just want to run. I just want to jog. I want to take things in, notice my surroundings, maybe just be really present with what's happening with my body versus what my watch is telling me. So enjoy each run for what it is, truly easy. So I mentioned this earlier, it's a chance to think, reflect, and just be. And how often in life do we get that? Like, never, right? Oh my gosh, unless you go to a yoga retreat, like chances are you're not getting a chance during the day to think, reflect, and just be. And this is where this run, these easy and recovery runs can be just that. And they could be very sacred time in your day to just have some time for you and to really have this beautiful experience out there running. You don't have to rush the process, and you can show up consistently to put the work in each day. It kind of takes off that expectation factor, right? That expectation hat of like, you don't have to rush the process. You don't have to rush training. You don't have to rush your run. Like, take this time to just be and to really be absorbed in it. I was on a long run last weekend and I got so caught up in the visualization of a race that's coming up. And when this airs, I've already run it, that I missed 2 turns on my route, which is a route I have run frequently. And I had a 10-mile long run and I ended up running the 12-mile loop. So at around mile 7, I had like this aha moment where I was like, I am far away from home. I am not 3 miles away from home. I am much farther away. And I had this like emergency, like backup plan to like emergency exit the route and like cut through, and I cut off a mile, which was great. So I was still a mile over. So I had to walk home for a mile, but I had to laugh to myself. Like, I haven't been that focused and that dialed in on visualization and really truly like feeling my run. It was almost like being in this flow state for a long run, which had zero pace work, zero progression. It was just like aerobic, like just go out there and run 10 miles easy. And it was so much fun. And I was not rushing, but I wanted in the back of all of that in my mind, I wanted to get back to see how some athletes were doing who were racing that day. And then I just had to chuckle when my watch stopped at 10 and I was still a full mile away. So I think if that happens to you, congratulations. Like you are truly in the zone, in the zen, and you just earned yourself a walk home. So awesome. And then I think too, the last point on how to enjoy the space phase of easy running is like feeling like you have more to give. And I think that that's a great feeling to understand and to have. Your recovery process is shorter. You don't have to spend as much time recovering because you're actively recovering while you're running. So it's kind of like being more efficient while you're running. You're going to have more energy. You're going to have less fatigue. And that all helps us at the end of the day, I think, just be better humans and stronger humans and happier humans. And I've heard that time and time and time again from athletes who really learn that importance of the easy run because they feel it. They're like, oh, wow, Coach Sarah, I was able to finish my run. I had more to give. I had so much energy to give to my family for the rest of the day. This was awesome. And it's that feeling that will make you want to keep going back to it because you're going to be able to do more instead of running everything so hard that you're not able to necessarily have all those benefits and that you have to be on the couch for the rest of the day, something like that. Like if that's how you want to be, that's fine, but there are better ways to spend your time and it's more efficient all the way around. So I hope that this episode lands for you, whether you're a new runner, maybe you're a runner who's been out of the racing game or training game for a while, or hey, maybe you're a runner who's in this base phase of training right now. And it's this friendly reminder of why we do base phase training, why the easy running is such a huge piece to our development as a human, as a runner, and how it can up level us for our next or our upcoming race. Maybe it's this fall. So if you are looking for more help with the base phase of training, or you're looking to develop a strong base period before your next race, I help athletes just like you discover their wins, untap their potential, and find their strength all through training. So one-on-one coaching spots are now open with either myself or Coach Amber. She's awesome. You can find her on Instagram at Running with Moxie. We have spots open specifically for Chicago as well as any other fall race. The Chicago Elevate team is strong this year. And if you've been listening to the podcast, you know it's my favorite race ever. Ever. It's so exciting. It's hands down so cool. So I'd love to train and help train anyone looking to crush their fall race or show up to be stronger. So you can schedule a free consult call through the scheduling link in the podcast description box. You can also rate and subscribe this podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great week and I'll see you later.